Hey there. Tonight we're going back again, not to palaces or poems, but to the places history left behind. The cold corners, the muddy floors, the quiet lives that didn't make it into the books. We're stepping into the shoes of medieval peasants, people who didn't have power or luxury, only sharp instincts, tough hands, and a dozen little tricks that kept them alive. This isn't the history of kings. It's the history of surviving with less. No armor, no silver, just frostbitten mornings, calloused feet, and the kind of wisdom that's passed down around fires and worn into the seams of wool cloaks. If slow, atmospheric stories like this help you relax or sleep, you're in the right place. Tap the like button if you find peace here. Subscribe if you want more quiet corners of forgotten lives. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. There's something quietly beautiful about seeing who else is out there, wrapped in blankets, fading into the same story. So dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe put on a fan if you like a little hum in the background. Let's begin. Let's see why 24 hours in a medieval village would break most of us, without these 17 peasant survival tricks. You wake in the dark, before the rooster, before the sun. The hut is colder than it should be, colder than it was yesterday. That's how you know something's wrong. The fire is out. Just ash and silence where heat should be. You press your hand to the hearthstone. Cold, dangerous. That's trick number 1. Never let the fire die, not even for a moment. It's not just warmth, it's light, it's safety. It's how you cook, how you boil water, how you keep the damp from soaking into your bones. Without it, the night stretches longer, teeth bared. Without it, you're prey. In the Middle Ages, fire isn't optional, it's survival in flame form. You can't strike a match or flick a switch, you coax it from flint and steel, or beg a burning stick from a neighbour if yours goes cold. That walk alone, barefoot in frost, is enough to make you vow never to forget again. So you learn to bank coals, pile ash over the embers at night, tuck them in like a child. You learn to read heat by sight, the faint orange that means life still flickers. A good firekeeper knows by instinct when to stir, when to feed, when to breathe slow and low to wake it back to life. Without fire you don't eat, you don't see, you don't sleep soundly. The chill sets in, makes your teeth ache, makes your skin burn like it's covered in ice. One night like that, and you start to understand why peasants guard their hearth like it's holy, because it is. In a world without comfort, it's the only kind you make with your own 2 hands. So you rebuild it now. A little moss, some shavings, your last dry twig. You strike the flint once, twice, the spark catches, and the world begins again. You head out early, before the fields are warm, before the dew has burned off the grass. A basket in one hand, your eyes low, scanning the edges of the world. The forest is too thick to enter deeply, but the edges are generous, if you know what you're looking for. That's trick number 2. Know what grows and what kills. A handful of nettles will feed you for days. A few leaves of mugwort can calm a fever, but the wrong berry, the wrong root, the wrong mushroom, that's a quiet, painful end, the kind that leaves you breathless on a dirt floor with no one able to help. Peasants learn early what plants to boil, what to chew, what to avoid even touching. You don't have doctors, you have mothers, grandmothers, and the woods. You learn by watching, by trial, by memory burned into your brain because the price of forgetting is someone you love. You pass yarrow, growing in soft clusters near a damp log, good for bleeding. You cut some, gently. You skip the white mushrooms with the split caps. Last year those took Marta's uncle. You remember how he screamed when his stomach turned inside out. Some things you never forget. There's beauty in the wild things, sure. A cluster of violets by a stream, bright red hips on the rose bushes. But you don't gather because it's pretty. You gather because you're hungry. or someone's coughing, or the goats have eaten something they shouldn't. Everything green has a use, and everything deadly has a twin that's harmless. That's the cruel part. The leaves that save a fever look just like the ones that stop a heart. So you carry caution like a second cloak. You taste with care. You boil what's bitter. You trust the old ways, even when you don't understand them, because someone, long ago, figured it out. And their lesson might be all that's keeping you alive now. You don't have time for mistakes. Just quiet steps, a sharp eye, and the memory of what each stem can do. The sun's not high yet, but already the village hums with motion. Feet in the mud, hose in the soil, buckets sloshing, a dozen small sounds that mean life continues. No one gives orders. No one needs to. Everyone knows their part. That's trick number 3. Share the work, or it doesn't get done. There's no room here for pride, no task too low. You might be mending a roof one day and mucking out the goat pen the next. If you try to do it alone, something will fail. A fence will rot, a sheep will wander, a meal will burn. Everything here depends on everyone. You help your neighbour patch his wall, not because you're kind, but because next week you might need his help when your cart loses a wheel. The favours aren't spoken aloud, they're simply understood, passed back and forth like bread at supper. Children fetch water, elders sort grain, even the sick, when they can, sort wool or shell peas from a stool by the door. That's how it works. If you're breathing, you're useful. If you're not helping, you're noticed. You remember one winter when the snow fell early and thick. The ox shelter collapsed. Half the village dug through the drifts, bare-handed, hauling timber, shouting to be heard over the wind. No one was paid. No one asked. That's just what you do. It's not all harmony. Tempers flare. Tools are borrowed and not returned. Someone always thinks they're doing more than their share. But complaints fade by evening, melted into calloused hands and aching backs. You go to bed too tired to stay angry. That's the truth of it. Out here, survival is not individual. It's collective. If one family suffers, everyone feels it by spring. If someone hoards, they'll eat alone and starve with a full basket. So you lend a hand when you can. You teach what you know, and you never, ever let someone struggle alone, because next time, it might be you. You don't sleep deep here, not unless you've gone soft. Not unless you can afford to let your guard down, and no one in this village can. You rest in layers, half dreams, half listening. One ear on the creak of the door, one eye half open if the goats get restless. That's trick number 4. Sleep light, rise early, or risk falling behind the day. You lie down on straw, maybe a thin wool mat if you've earned or inherited one. The fire still flickers, banked beneath a mound of ash. The room is quiet but never silent. You hear the wind through the thatch, the shifting breath of your family beside you, the drip of water from a leaky corner of the roof that you keep meaning to patch. Sleep comes in pieces, an hour here, 2 there. You wake when the fire pops, when the baby coughs, when the dog growls at something it doesn't like outside. You learn not to ask what it was. You learn not to step outside unless something's really wrong. That kind of caution saves lives. The rooster doesn't wake you. You're up before him. There's too much to do to let light find you in bed. By the time the sun tips over the hill, you've already fed the animals, checked the traps, fetched the first load of water, and stirred the morning's porridge. It's still dark, but the village is already stirring. One by one, fires are coaxed back to life. Doors open, cold air slips in, and the day begins again. You've seen what happens to those who sleep too long. Not often, but enough. They miss the frost creeping into the roots. They miss the wolf that slipped the fence. They miss the first chance to gather what little the forest gives. A missed morning is a missed meal later. The math is simple. The consequences are not. Even the old ones rise early. They sit by the hearth before the rest of the house wakes, holding their hands over the coals, whispering prayers or just watching the flames. They don't move fast, but they move. That's enough. That's always enough. And when you lie down again, late and sore and blinking through smoke, you don't expect rest. You expect stillness for as long as it lasts, a break between hours, a pause between worries, because the morning comes fast. It always does, and it never, ever waits. You don't have a calendar, no almanac, no weather reports, no clock ticking in the corner. You have the sky, that's all. And it tells you everything if you know how to listen. That's trick number 5. Learn the sky like scripture, or the land will turn against you before you even understand why. You wake each day and glance up, not out of habit but necessity. The clouds speak before they break. The wind changes its tone before it changes its direction. The birds fly lower before the rain. It's all there, if you've been taught how to see. Your mother taught you first. When the morning fog clings low and thick, don't plant. When the clouds come in from the west in fast, high streaks, prepare for 3 days of hard wind. When the air feels still and the birds go silent, close the shutters and keep the fire warm. It's going to turn on you before nightfall. The sky is not just about weather, it tells you about time too. The angle of the sun says more than any bell. You know when it's midday by the way the shadows hide beneath your feet. You know when the harvest is late by the length of dusk. The stars themselves mark the turning of the year. When Orion returns, it's time to brace for frost. When the sun sets just past the split tree on the ridge, you know the solstice has come. And that knowledge isn't just pretty, it's power. It's how you stay fed. If you sow too early, a surprise frost will take your crop. If you cut too late, the grain will mold in the field. You can't afford mistakes. A wrong guess means a thin bread for a month, or worse, none at all. You've seen others fail. A family that tried to beat the sky, to rush the sowing. They didn't wait for the blackthorn bloom, and the rain washed everything out. That winter, their youngest didn't make it. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't greed. Just a misread sky. That's how fine the line is out here. A single morning's misjudgment can ripple for months. So you learn to feel the changes in your bones, the way a storm builds behind your eyes, the way your joints ache when the pressure dips. You don't guess anymore. You sense. And when a neighbour asks you what the clouds mean, you tell them. Because this knowledge isn't hoarded. It's passed, like bread, like fire. Shared because it's sacred. Because next time you might be the one asking. At night you sit outside the hut and look up again. The stars are sharp, cold, endless. But they don't scare you. Not anymore. Because you've learned their story. And if you read the sky well, you'll live another season, maybe 2. You'll never be truly warm here. Not for long. Not in winter, not in spring, and sometimes not even in the heart of summer when the nights still creep in like a thief. Warmth is rare. It's fragile, and when you find it, you have to keep it, not just feel it. That's trick number 6. Hide warmth where it lasts, inside your clothes, under your breath, between your bones. You learn early how to layer. A linen shift, a wool tunic, a cloak thick with patches, heavier each year from repairs. But fabric only goes so far when the wind finds its way through every seam. So you learn the real secrets. How to tuck coals under a clay pot wrapped in cloth. How to breathe into your hands, then press them under your arms to trap the heat. How to dry your boots with hot stones rolled from the hearth. Slipped in just before sleep. There's a blanket in your hut that's older than you are. coarse, woven, fraying at the corners, but warm because it remembers 100 nights of shivering bodies pressed beneath it. That's the warmth you pass on. Not bought, not new, just earned. The kind of warmth that carries a family through years, not hours. You keep close to others too. At night, everyone sleeps in the same space. Not for love or comfort, but for heat. Children sleep pressed against parents, parents against the wall, dogs curled at feet, goats sometimes brought inside when the cold bites too hard. You wake to snoring, to coughing, to the scent of sour wool and smoke, but you wake alive. That's the deal. You give up space to keep the warmth. In the fields, you move fast to fight the chill. Work is your furnace. Digging, lifting, walking with purpose. You learn not to stand still too long, even when your back aches. Stillness is the enemy. Stillness lets the cold in. And when you do get warm, truly warm, you hold onto it like a secret. A mug of broth near the fire, a sunbeam through the cracks in the roof, a stolen moment with your hands wrapped around a sheep's neck, pressing into the thick coat. It's never much, but it's something, enough to remember the body can still feel good. Sometimes you talk about heat like it's a person. You ask, where did it go? You say, let's catch it, like you're chasing a rabbit. And maybe you are. Because warmth runs fast and it doesn't often come back on its own. There is worse things than cold, of course, but few are more persistent. Hunger fades if you rest. Grief softens in time. But cold sits on your chest like a stone. Cold wakes you up before dawn. Cold makes your hands stiff until they drop the bucket. Cold steals your breath and doesn't give it back. So you plan for it. You prepare like you're expecting a guest you don't like, but must entertain. You stuff rags into door cracks. You keep dry twigs in a hidden pouch. You teach children to walk with their hands tucked into sleeves, and never to waste their breath on curses that don't warm the air. Because warmth is not a gift. It's a skill, a prize, a trick passed down, and without it, the night takes what it wants. The meals here don't come in courses. They don't come in colours or shapes or scents you'd recognise as food if you were raised with plenty. They come in grey mush, dark crusts, bitter greens, things boiled so long they forget where they came from. That's trick number 7. Eat what others wouldn't dare touch, and thank the earth for giving even that. You don't waste anything. Not a crust, not a skin, not a bone. You chew on cartilage, you suck marrow from split femurs. You grind grain that's half husk and bake it into bread so dense you could use it as a doorstop. But you eat it, and you learn to feel full, not from flavour, but from weight. You eat what grows, roots shaped like twisted fingers, tubers that need soaking to leach out the poison, nettles that sting when you gather them but soften when boiled, dandelions, sorrel, thistle, greens that city folk would step over in disgust become the body of your soup. And then there are the scraps, the bits others wouldn't claim, sheep's tongue, liver, hearts, feet boiled to jelly, not delicacies, just calories. You learn to clean intestines with salt, to scrape fat from hide, to make broth from heads with eyes still staring. You don't look away, you just work, because you know what it costs to waste. You remember the famine, not because it was rare, but because it was worse. The winter when the barley failed and even the rats left. You roasted acorns that made your belly cramp, chewed leather softened in broth, ground dried weeds into flour and prayed it wouldn't kill you. It didn't. Not all of you. That was enough. You dry apples sliced so thin you can see light through them. You salt what little meat you get, smoke it over the fire until the whole hut smells like ash and stubborn hope. You stretch it across days, across mouths. and still someone always gets less. Children eat first, elders eat last. That's the rule. Not spoken, just known. You once watched your grandmother give away her portion for a week straight. When she finally collapsed, she smiled, said it was worth it, said the little one still had growing to do. You chew slow, not because it tastes good, but because you want to feel it. Make the meal last in your mouth longer than it lasts in the pot. That's another trick you don't say out loud. Slow eating fills the belly faster. Sometimes someone traps a rabbit. Sometimes a hen lays 2 eggs. Those days feel like feast days. You boil the bones twice, you lick the shell. You gather round and remember what it is to laugh with something in your stomach besides hunger. You don't dream of banquets. You dream of enough. Enough to sleep without your gut growling. Enough to offer seconds. Enough to put aside for tomorrow. Because here, food isn't pleasure. It's strategy. And you learn to survive on what the world throws away. Rain looks gentle from a window. You don't have one. You feel it before it falls, smell it in the air, heavy with earth and old leaves. The sky sinks low, the light changes, then the drops come fast, cold and merciless. And when they do, you move, fast. That's trick number 8. Stay dry or die trying. Because wet is more than discomfort out here. It's danger. Wet clothes mean a soaked body, and a soaked body means cold, and cold means fever. And you know what fever brings. No one's coming with medicine, no bed rest here, no warm towel folded over a brow. You sweat it out or it takes you. So you watch the clouds like hawks. You read them, same as you read the land. A dark streak on the horizon. You leave the tools and run for cover. A sudden wind through the trees. You call the children back. Even one mistake, one stubborn moment spent finishing a chore in the open, and your boots will flood, your cloak will cling, your skin will freeze. You build smart. Thatched roofs slope to shed the water fast. Walls stuffed with straw to keep the worst out. Gaps plugged with moss and clay. If the roof drips, you don't wait. You mend it, even if it's midnight. Because a single leak left alone becomes rot, becomes illness, becomes weakness you can't afford. Your clothes are never truly waterproof, just thick, layered, oiled sometimes with animal fat. You hang cloaks near the fire to dry, turning them slowly, careful not to scorch them. You know the smell of wet wool so well it lives in your memory. There's a place in the woods, an old hollow beneath a bent ash tree. You use it as shelter when you're caught far from home. You keep dry kindling wrapped in oiled cloth buried there just in case. That's trick number 9, folded into 8. Have a place to run to when the sky opens. The little ones don't understand at first. They splash in puddles, laugh in the mud. You let them when the weather's warm. But when the wind bites and their fingers go red, you pull them close, wrap them up. Teach them what the cold can take. You've seen what happens to the careless, the boy who wandered too far from the fields during a storm. They found him curled beneath a tree, eyes open, lips blue. Just a few hours was all it took. That's the lesson. Nature doesn't hate you, it just doesn't care. So you carry dry cloth tucked in your belt. You build windbreaks with sticks and brush. You watch the dogs. When they run for cover, you do too. You prepare like the rain's already falling. Because out here, you don't get extra chances. Just wet bones and the long wait for warmth. The sun drops fast here. One moment, the fields are gold. The next, they're shadow. And once the dark sets in, it stays. There are no street lamps, no torches lining the paths. Only what you carry and what you remember. That's trick number 9. Never walk alone after dusk. Not for pride, not for curiosity, not for anything, because the world changes when the light fades. The trees look different, so do the sounds. Owls, sure, Wind, yes. But sometimes other things. A footstep that doesn't match yours. A whisper with no breath behind it. You stop walking when that happens. You don't look back. You just go home. It's not just superstition. Not just old tales passed around the hearth. You've seen what happens to those who ignore it. The smith's eldest, too bold for his own good, dared to cut across the marsh trail after sundown. They found his boot the next morning, wedged between reeds. Just the boot. No one asked for more. You don't leave the hut after dusk unless you must. A sick child needing herbs. A lamb gone missing. Even then you bring someone, not for company, for witness, so the night knows you're not easy prey. There's a rule for the lanterns. Never let them go out. You guard the flame like a heartbeat. You shield it with your hand. Breathe soft to keep it from flickering. Because if it goes out, you stop seeing. And when you stop seeing, that's when the world reaches for you. Old Ida says the dark belongs to the old gods. The ones before the church came with its bells and promises. She leaves bits of bread near the threshold each full moon, just in case. You used to laugh at her. You don't anymore. Even the animals sense it. Dogs grow quiet. Chickens roost early. The goats cluster close to the fence, heads down, not sleeping, just waiting. That kind of silence means don't go. And it's not just creatures in the dark. It's men too. Desperate ones. Cold ones. Ones with nothing left but hunger and hate. The roads aren't safe in daylight, but at night they belong to the worst of the living and the restless dead. So you teach the young early. When the sun sets, you stay close. You bar the door. You bank the fire. You speak softly. You don't whistle. You don't sing. And you never, ever answer a voice you can't see, because the dark doesn't play fair. It doesn't forgive. It only waits. You don't have much, no one does. The richest person in the village has an extra blanket and a pig that doesn't limp. And still, that blanket could be borrowed and that pig could be taken. That's the truth you learn young. That's trick number 10. Own nothing that can't be carried or buried. The hut you live in? Not yours. It was your father's. Before that, his. But if the crop fails or a tax is missed, it becomes someone else's just as fast. The land you walk, the woods you borrow from, the fields you break your back in, all of it belongs to someone with a seal, a scroll, a sword. You're just the hands that tend it. So you keep your possessions simple. A knife, a flint, a pouch with dry herbs, maybe a carved token tied on a leather cord, something from your mother's mother, something touched more than looked at. You don't hoard. You remember where things are hidden, what can be traded, what's worth taking if you need to flee before dawn. You've seen huts burn, a cooking fire tipped by wind, a straw roof too dry. You saw the smoke rise, the flames spread, and people clawing through ash for the smallest things. A child's shoe, a pot, a single spoon. They didn't find much, but they searched because those few items were their lives. That's why you carry meaning in your body, not your hands. Songs your father sang when the work was done. Recipes passed without measurement. Curses and prayers in the same breath. Things no one can take. Things that go with you. Your clothes are stitched with care, but never decoration. Every patch is proof of use. Every stitch says this lasted. Even your tools double as weapons. Not because you want them to, but because you might have to run with only what's in your belt, and it needs to matter. And you never forget where you buried the extras. Yes, that's part of it too. Trick within a trick. The hollow beneath the old tree. The crevice in the stone wall behind the chapel. A few coins. A scrap of dried meat. A piece of iron bent into a hook. Not treasure exactly, just enough. Enough to start again if everything else is taken. You trust your feet more than your roof. You trust your memories more than your neighbours, because homes can be burned, fields seized, livestock stolen. But the knowledge of how to survive, that lives inside you, and it weighs nothing. You don't own peace here. You rent it, with obedience, with grain, with silence. The Lord may be far away, sealed in stone and feather beds, but his reach stretches all the way to your doorstep. And it has hands, hard ones. That's trick number 11. Keep one eye on the Lord and one on the bailiff, because one starves you and the other shows up to take what's left. You see the bailiff more than you see the priest. That says enough. He rides in with a ledger and an attitude, his boots too clean for your road, his words too soft to trust. He doesn't shout. He doesn't have to. You know why he's here. He doesn't ask how your winter was, whether the pigs birthed right, whether the barley blackened from too much rain. He reads from a list and expects the number to match. If it doesn't, something else must fill the gap. A chicken, a blanket, a labour promise that takes your son from the field for a week you can't spare. So you keep your head down and your yield up, or at least pretend to. You pad the grain sack with the straw if you must. You tuck the best root vegetables under the hearth where the light doesn't reach. You give enough to satisfy, not enough to bleed. It's a delicate line. One misstep, and the bailiff brings consequences. You've seen lashes laid into a neighbour's back for missing 2 eggs worth. The Lord's name is only ever whispered. You've never seen him. Some say he visited once decades ago to inspect the forest line. Others say he died and no one told the village. Doesn't matter. His presence is still here, in your taxes, in your oaths, in the quiet fear behind every harvest. When the tithe comes due, you dress plain, you scrub the children's faces, you offer a slice of cheese if you have it, just enough to show you're not hiding, even if you are. That's trick number 12, wrapped inside this one. A gift covers a lie better than an excuse does. Some people talk about rebellion, quietly, over ale, when no one important is near. But you've seen what rebellion brings. Burnt cottages, bodies left unburied, more suffering than justice. So you listen, nod once and go back to patching the fence. Survival first, pride later. Maybe. You learn to read the bailiff's mood from his horse, from the way he dismounts, from whether he looks you in the eye or just past you, like you're already forgotten. You watch his hands. You never show him your fear, only your firewood, your barley, your tired, willing smile. Because in the Middle Ages, peace isn't earned with loyalty. It's bartered with silence and kept with careful lies. There's a rhythm to village life, quiet days that hum beneath the surface, footsteps you recognize by sound alone, voices that blend like wind in trees. It's a closed circle, tight, familiar, watchful. So when someone new appears, it feels like the air itself changes. That's trick number 12. Trust the silence before you trust a stranger, because the silence has never lied to you. Strangers don't show up often. When they do, the whole village feels it. Conversations slow, doors hang half closed, tools clink a little softer. Even the animals sense it. The dogs bark more than usual. The hens stay close to their roosts. He might be a tinker, a peddler, a wandering friar. She might claim to be a healer, a widow, a servant looking for a new roof. But names don't mean anything here, only actions do. So you watch, quietly, carefully. You remember the last one, a traveller with fine boots and too little dirt on his hands. Said he was looking for work, but never asked where the tools were. Asked too many questions instead, about the Lord, about the stores, about who had goats and who didn't. He was gone by morning, and so was Marta's silver bowl. There's no constable to chase him, no lawman to file a complaint with. There's only memory, and memory holds a grudge better than paper. You ask around without asking directly. Where did you say you came from? What road did you take in? Who sent you? The way they answer matters less than how they answer. A good liar keeps eye contact. A dangerous one doesn't flinch. But it's the hesitant ones you trust a little more. The ones who look tired, worn, honest in their weariness. Even then you don't invite them in right away. You offer a crust, a bowl of broth if there's extra. You let them sleep in the shed, maybe. You tell them where not to walk, which paths lead nowhere. You wait to see if they'll take what isn't offered. The children are taught early. Don't speak to a stranger unless your mother stands behind you. Don't answer if someone calls your name from beyond the fence. Don't follow laughter into the woods. Not because strangers are always evil, but because you've never needed a stranger more than you've needed caution. That's the way of things here. You grow close to those who bury their dead in the same soil, who bleed in the same fields, who've earned your trust by surviving beside you, season after season. And if a stranger proves themselves over time, well, maybe they'll become part of the rhythm. Maybe one day their footsteps will be just another beat in the quiet drum of life. But not yet, and not quickly, because silence here is safe, and anything that breaks it earns suspicion before welcome. You don't waste words here, not on feelings, not on plans, and certainly not on introductions. You speak with your hands first, with your back, your effort, your calluses. That's how people learn who you are. That's trick number 13. Let the tools speak first, because out here, work is your name before anything else is. The hoe doesn't care if you're angry. The plough doesn't wait for a good mood. The hammer doesn't soften because you didn't sleep. You pick it up anyway, because what needs doing won't get done if you're waiting for the right time. Your hands talk in rhythms. The way you mend a roof tells your neighbour more than any promise. The way you carry water, balanced and steady, says you've been doing it since you were small. The way you sweep the same patch of floor every evening means you still believe in some kind of order, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. You don't boast. No one does. A man who brags about chopping wood usually hasn't chopped enough to be tired. A woman who speaks of her sewing as art will find her seams questioned by morning frost. What you do shows up in the final cut, in the way the fence doesn't lean anymore, in the way the bread doesn't collapse in the oven. There are few compliments here. The best you can hope for is a nod, a second glance, a neighbour borrowing your knife because yours is always sharp. And that's enough. That's how trust grows. Not with declarations, but with tools handed back clean. You learn to notice others the same way. The way someone ties a rope, tight with a twist at the end. The way they lift with their knees, not their back. The way they test the tension of a bowstring without thinking. These are the signs of someone who's worth something when the storm comes. Because storms always come. The young ones don't know yet. They talk too much, handle blades without care, forget to oil the saw. But the work teaches fast. A chipped axe makes you late. A cracked bucket means 2 more trips to the stream. There's no mercy for mistakes. Not from the world, and not from the tool in your hand. Even your voice changes. You speak less. Your tone flattens. You start saying only what needs to be said, and sometimes even less than that. You grunt instead of answering. You point instead of explaining. That's not rudeness, that's economy. And in this world, economy of effort means everything. So when someone new joins the line to thresh grain, no one welcomes them out loud. No one hands them praise. They're given a tool, that's all. Their answer comes with each swing, each repetition, each blister, because in the Middle Ages your work is your witness, and your tools tell your truth better than any oath ever will. You won't stay clean out here, not for long. Dirt finds its way into everything. Your cuffs, your sleeves, the cracks of your skin, the corners of your mouth. You breathe it, you sweat it, you carry it with you like a second skin. But even in all this mud and ash, there's a rule that doesn't get spoken much anymore, but is always followed. That's trick number 14. Keep one hand clean, because when death walks close, cleanliness can buy you another day. It's not about looking neat, it's about infection, illness, rot, the kind that starts in a fingernail and ends in a grave. You've seen it happen. A cut from a splinter that turned red, then hot, then black. A child with soot in his mouth after playing near the fire, fevered by nightfall, gone by the end of the week. You can't afford to forget that in this world, the smallest things kill the fastest. So you keep a bucket near the door. You change the water in it daily, even when water is scarce. You rub your hands with ash or with sharp-smelling herbs when you can't boil water. You keep your knife wiped down, even if the cloth is filthy, even if it's the same cloth you used to patch your foot earlier. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. You wash before touching food. Always. Not because anyone told you to, but because once you didn't, and you remember what happened. The stew went sour, the whole hut sick. A week of moaning, dry mouths, and wool soaked in sweat. You remember what the vomit looked like, what it smelled like. That memory does more than fear ever could. You teach the children without preaching. You swat their hands when they reach for the bread too soon. You rinse their mouths with herb tea when they drink from the wrong puddle. They cry, they pout, but they learn, because you've seen too many little graves dug just outside the chapel fence. It's not just hands. You scrape under your nails with a thorn. You boil your comb when someone catches lice. You burn old bandages. You don't share cups when someone coughs. And if you have to clean a wound, you do it with a prayer, and with hands so scrubbed they sting. Some say cleanliness is next to godliness. You don't know about that. All you know is, when the fever comes, the clean hand might be the one that pulls someone back from the edge. And even if it doesn't save you, it won't damn the ones you love. So you wash, not to shine, not to smell sweet, but to stay one day further from the hole in the ground. Out here, words are not for wasting. They don't flow freely like a river, they drip like sap. Slow, measured, earned, and sometimes dangerous. That's trick number 15. Listen before you speak. Because in a village this small, every word becomes a shadow that follows you. You hear everything, even when you're not meant to. Voices carry through walls made of wattle and daub. Secrets slip under doors that don't quite shut. A single phrase muttered at the well becomes a story by evening. No one forgets what you say, and no one lets it die easy, so you wait. You let others talk first. You listen to their tone, to the pauses, to what they don't say. You learn more from a silence than from any boast. You remember the man who couldn't stop talking, full of ideas, questions, too curious about the Lord's share, too vocal about the unfair weight of the tax. People laughed at first, called him bold, clever. But when the steward returned and his grain sack was lighter than expected, no one stood by him. Not one. He left before winter, or so people said. Listening is how you find your place. Who's angry, who's scared, who's sick and hiding it. You learn the rhythms. Who curses the cold in the same breath every morning? Who hums before they lie? Who knocks twice when they visit after dark? All of it matters. Every sound is a sign. Even the forest speaks if you let it. The birds fall quiet before something stirs. The trees creak differently in a heavy wind. You notice these things when your life depends on it, which it does, every day. It's tempting to fill the silence, especially when you're tired, when your thoughts feel too loud to keep inside. But out here, silence is sacred. It's the shield between you and suspicion, between you and sorrow. You keep it close, and when you finally do speak, when you offer advice or a warning or simply a name, you do so carefully, like you're placing something on the table you can't take back, because that's exactly what it is. There's a saying here, a quiet tongue keeps your belly full. It's not about being shy, it's about being smart, about letting others show their hands before you reach for your own. So you listen to voices, to footsteps, to fire crackling in a certain way. You listen because it saves you, it connects you. It reminds you that in this life, noise is cheap, but silence is currency. There's always something left to do. A fence leaning just enough to matter, a roof sagging under last night's rain, a pot that needs scrubbing before dawn. There's no such thing as finished here, only paused. That's trick number 16. Rest isn't something you're given, it's something you steal, in slivers between the cracks of the day. You don't rest because the work is done. You rest because if you don't, your hands won't hold the plough tomorrow. You close your eyes, not because it's dark, but because if you keep them open any longer, the firelight starts to blur. It's not laziness. There's no room for that here. Everyone works, even the old ones, even the sick, but everyone learns to find moments, quiet, hidden, sacred moments, where rest fits, where it slips in like a thread through cloth, between tasks, between bites, between the last whisper and the first rooster crow. You sit with your back against a warm wall after carrying water, and you don't move until the chill returns. You lean on your rake for 5 seconds longer than necessary, just to feel your spine stretch. You hold your child close, not just to comfort them, but because the weight of their body is soft and still, and reminds you that not everything in life demands. The young ones fight sleep, they run until they fall. You don't stop them. Let them use their energy while they have it. You know that later, rest won't be about comfort, it'll be about calculation. When to stop, where to stop, how much longer you can go before your legs betray you. You once knew a man who worked himself into the ground, literally, collapsed in the field mid-swing, hand still clenched around the scythe. Some said it was pride, some said it was a bad heart. But everyone agreed on one thing. He hadn't stopped in weeks. So now, when the sun hits the top of the chapel roof just so, and the birds fall quiet and no one's calling your name, you sit, just for a moment, just enough to remind your body that it's still yours, that it's more than a tool. Rest doesn't come in hours, it comes in heartbeats, in sips of broth, in the hush after the last log falls into the fire. You don't need a soft bed, just a flat space, just a blanket that doesn't smell too much of mold, just the feeling of not moving. You won't get much of it, not here, but you take what you can, when you can, because in a world that never stops, rest is not a luxury, it's resistance. You can lose everything out here, and you probably will. Food, warmth, shelter, even the people you love. One storm, one sickness, one hungry winter is all it takes. But there's one thing they can't touch. Not the Lord, not the hunger, not the cold. That's trick number 17. Remember what's yours can't be taken, because what's truly yours lives in the spine, not the soil. You don't own your house. The wood came from borrowed trees. The land beneath your feet belongs to someone with ink and a seal. Your tools could be claimed. Your livestock could be slaughtered by order or desperation. Even your body, your labor, your strength belongs to the next chore waiting in line. But your will, that's yours. So is your silence when you choose not to speak. Your name, even if no one outside this valley ever hears it. The way you sing to your child in the dark, the way you keep standing after everything in you wants to lie down. You've known people who lost everything and still managed to laugh by the fire. Not loud, not long, but it was real. That laugh didn't come from food or safety. It came from defiance, from something deep in the chest that says, I'm still here. That's what makes you a survivor. Not strength, not cleverness. Just this. You wake up and do the work again, knowing it might not be enough, and you do it anyway. The lords think they own you. The taxes say they do. But they don't know your memories, the stories you tell in the quiet. The pain you've hidden so well even your children don't see it. The song that hums in your throat when no one is listening. They can't take that. They can't even see it. So you pass it down. Not in books, not in lessons, but in the way you tie a bundle of herbs just so. In the way you step across the creek, always the same stones. In the way you say, we'll manage, and somehow you always do. In a world built to keep you small, this is your rebellion. You remember who you are, and you act like you still matter. And that keeps you alive longer than bread. And so, another day ends at the edge of history. The fire burns low, the tools are hung. The fields, for now, are quiet. You've seen how survival in the Middle Ages wasn't about swords or glory. It was about rhythm, stillness, memory. A dozen little tricks passed from hand to hand, not to win, just to last. If this story brought you a moment of peace, feel free to like the video. It helps more than you know. And if you want more quiet journeys through forgotten lives, subscribe. We'll be back soon. Before you go, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is. There's something comforting about knowing we're scattered across the world, but hearing the same soft story under different skies. So tuck in, let the day go. You've made it through. Sleep well.